Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast, powered by ISOFIT and Firefly Recovery. ISOFIT is my go-to for all things isometric strength training. For more on ISOFIT, be sure to check out isofit.com. Episodes like this are made possible by Firefly, the official recovery provider of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. For more on Firefly, be sure to check out recoveryfirefly.com. This episode is powered by Dr. Ray Gorman, founder of Engage Movement. Learn how to boost your income without relying on sessions. Get a free training on the blended practice model by following at Ray Gorman DPT on Instagram. Dakotah, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today. Huge shout out to our friend Casey for getting us connected here. For people who aren't familiar with you and all the amazing things you got going on from the Eastern Shore to Towson, field hockey, and beyond that way, would you mind filling them in a bit about who you are and all the amazing things you have going on?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I started playing when I was in third grade. I fell in love with the sport really quickly. I'm from Pocomoke City, Maryland, and I played all 4 years at Pocomoke High School. I have 2 state championships, and I'm very grateful for everything that came from literally just playing in my backyard to being on that state championship field. I also think it's a huge part of being with a travel field hockey team, Shorebyrds. They're from the Eastern Shore, and they really just made me who I am and made me the player I wanted to be. And I didn't really know if I wanted to play in college. I loved the sport, and I had that drive. I always wanted to be better and, just, make my family proud. Like, no one's ever gone and played a sport in college and really ever been to college in my family. So I wanted to, honestly, it was kind of my drive to, yeah, I can do this. And I'll see you that, having in that mindset, I'm going to prove everyone wrong that thinks I got the offer from Towson, and I'm very happy there, and I'm really excited to see what comes the next 3 years.
Absolutely. No, I think that's amazing. And as you mentioned, you didn't just have the honor of being on that state championship field and winning a state championship once, but you actually did it twice, which is incredibly rare. My goodness. And for those listening that don't know the field hockey space, I feel like Pocomoke is just legendary in the field hockey space. And the stuff that occurs on the Eastern Shore is just absolutely iconic in every way that way. So for those that don't know about Pocomoke, would you be able to fill them in a little bit about kind of like the field hockey legacy that y'all have around there?
For people who know about Pocomoke and who don't, it's really just a family culture team, and it's been around for years. And I'm pretty sure we're at 22 state championships so far, which is a really high amount for a 1A school. But yeah, Susan Pusey passed away in 2015, and she's a huge legacy to this program. And Brandy Castaneda took over, as well as Casey Hickman. And Brandy Castaneda is actually there now again, and I want to give her a huge shout out. She's made me who I am now, and made me into the woman I am. But on the field and off the field, just made me so much stronger. But it's really with Pocomoke field hockey, it's a family environment. We care about each other. We have that grit of wanting to win, and taking losing is not an option. And that's how we have so many trophies and banners and rays in our town. And I think that's a huge thing. And I'm very grateful I had that before going into college, because I know what I do to be a team player. And it's not going to just take one person. It's everyone on the field and on.
Absolutely. No, I think there's something to be said about that kind of special team culture that way. It's funny, that comes up when I'm talking with a lot of different athletes that way, and they find that one of the most integral pieces to success, and maybe it's not talked about enough, is the overall vibe and atmosphere of the team itself that way. And when it feels more like a community, when it feels more like a family, overall the success tends to be higher long term, because obviously I think sports for most people are a little bit more enjoyable when they're winning and having fun with people that know them very well beyond just the lines of the sport, but maybe a little bit more personally and as a person as well. And they care about their success, not just in relation to the sport, but kind of life beyond sport as well. And it sounds like that was a very integral part of the community that you had around field hockey down there in Pocomoke that way. And it sounds like from what you're saying, that was kind of like one of the key cornerstones, if not the cornerstone, that led to the success that y'all experienced with multiple state championship runs and beyond that way.
It was a huge piece for us. Without that family piece, you don't click on the field, and you could tell when a team doesn't click because it's more of an I in the team instead of we. That makes sense. There could be some selfish players, and Pocomoke never allowed that. Like, if you wanted to be on that team, you're going to work your ass off to be with everyone else. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely, absolutely. And what do you feel like have you taken from that, from a team culture standpoint, that you can then apply in the future, in your future teams and endeavors, and possibly even maybe coaching? I don't know if you're going to have a coaching career in the future, but how do you feel like all of those things that you had at Pocomoke are able to kind of apply to kind of you playing at the next level that way?
So coming from Pocomoke and coming into Towson, I didn't know really how to go. I didn't know if the team was going to be just like Pocomoke, but realistically, nothing is like Pocomoke. Nothing's going to be that way. And it's just real. And I was a little nervous coming in because I'm so team oriented and family oriented that it kind of scared me. Like I wanted to have that Pocomoke effect on the team, but I also, like, as a freshman coming into a Division I team, that's kind of intimidating. So my freshman year, the fall, like, it was really hard, like, to transition and understand that everything is bigger than Pocomoke, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, you can be one of the best in a small town, but once you know, go into collegiate sports, it's like, it's always competition. And I think that's the one thing I loved about it. It was like, you weren't ever satisfied one day. Like, every day, it's like a competition. It just makes you better. And I think we, as a Towson athlete, I think we missed that family culture part for the fall, and it showed. We did way better than we did years past. We broke records, and we're on that build up to, like, try to, be in the CAA tournament and eventually get up to the NCAA tournament. This spring, we've really worked on our culture. We've done these get-togethers with Bo Hansen, Olympian. I'm not really sure where he's from, but he's done that. And I personally spoke up. And even as a freshman, it was kind of scary. I just was like, this is not a team. That family piece has to be there because there's no connection on the field. And that's a huge thing we're going into this year. And I think it was, like, really hard for me to stand out for myself because no one knows Pocomoke, obviously. If you're from Towson, like, no one knows what Pocomoke is. But I tried to speak my mind as much as I could. And leading into, like, my field hockey career and athletic career, I want to make sure I do the best I can and also be the best person I can for the team. It doesn't matter if I'm on the field or not. Like, I grew up with a team, and I'm going to make sure I'm a team player. In the future, I'd love to coach. I'd love to come back home and, keep that legacy going. I don't know where, but, I'm always open-ended with that. And I love to keep the game going because I love it. I love field hockey so much, and I love what it's made me into. So I want to carry that on if I can.
No, absolutely. I think you touched on so many amazing things. And I mean, first off, it sounds like there's an accountability piece to everything that you do that way. And as you mentioned, it's very difficult to help hold others accountable, especially when you're kind of the new kid on the block or the youngest kid on the team or, amongst the younger group on the team that way, if you will, that way. It's very easy, I found, to hold oneself accountable. And I'm able to do that quite easily. But when it comes to other people, I don't know what it is. I don't have words for it, but it's like it's more difficult for me to speak up and call them out sometimes and say, like, hey, look, like, we can't be going out and drinking 7 days a week when we're in season. We can't be doing X, Y, and Z. Like, we have to have some standards. We have to get along. We almost have to have this high respect and low ego nature for everyone around us that way on the team. And I think that's what makes it a team. And oftentimes that's just absent. And I find when that's present, teams do a lot better on the field from a performance standpoint, but also off the field and long term that way. It's funny. I was just talking yesterday with an individual, and we were sharing some of the statistics about athletes and kind of life after sport. And some of them are quite alarming that way. And one of the things that I feel like could help that and benefit that is just having more of a team culture and a team environment and making sure that everyone feels a part of something bigger than themselves instead of just kind of in it for themselves that way. And the other piece I want to hit on real quick is you mentioned about Pocomoke and that small town USA vibe. And I'm from a small town in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania originally, and we didn't even have field hockey at my school. And then I went to college near Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I learned all about field hockey. But what I learned is when people think field hockey in the U.S., they think of central Pennsylvania, they think of Charlotte, North Carolina, and they occasionally think of countries in Europe. But for some reason, a lot of them aren't familiar with the Delaware and Maryland side of things. And having lived there for 3 years, I feel like y'all played just as much of an impact, if not more of an impact, than some of these other places that people often think about that way. Is the way y'all teach the game, the way y'all mold athletes from such a young age and just have this kind of lifelong effect on them. I mean, I've seen it over and over again with some incredible athletes from the area. I mean, there's something special about it. There's nothing else quite like it that I've seen elsewhere that way. And even though, like you said, it's not like, the biggest dot on the map or the first thing that people come to mind, I really wish that people would start thinking about it more. And
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see how the game grows. I think the program Shorebyrds Field Hockey has really done a really huge build up with young athletes, and we're making the game fun. We're making it huge again. I want to get that in the future. I want to help out and just grow the love for the game. It may just be a sport to some people, but it's really just formed me into the person I am today.
what kind of things do you feel like you've learned and picked up from the sport of field hockey? Because I feel like people talk about this all the time. They say, oh yeah, sport teaches me a lot. And then they never really expand on the lessons and things that they've learned from it. So for you, what have you taken away from playing sport that way?
I think the main thing is you don't put any effort in. Say you're at school or something and you don't put the effort in to get an A, you're not going to succeed. If you're not going to put in the effort to go do your run in the morning, you're not going to succeed at the field. So I think even at work, if you're going to not be the best employee you can be and not put your 110% effort into it, you're not going to be up there. You're not going to succeed. And I think that's a huge part in sports nowadays. There will be some athletes that don't really have that spark, that wants to be better, that wants to go the extra mile. You know what I mean? I feel like it's just made me want to be better, and then not just on the field, but with my friends. I want to be the bigger person. I want to be the best person I can be for them. And same thing with their family. As I grow older, I get more mature, and I'm very grateful for everything, all the opportunities I have had. But at the same time, I have 3 more years of field hockey, but that's it. But at the same time, I'm very grateful for that. And leading into after college, I want to be a teacher. And I think being a teacher, I'm going to be a leader. And with field hockey, I am a leader in my own way. And I think every athlete has their own way of doing things. And I think that incorporates into their own. And I think a lot of people don't see that mental side of the game. And all athletes, there's always that mental side that everyone has that many other people that aren't athletes probably don't understand.
Absolutely. No, it's that classic iceberg analogy where you only see the tip of the iceberg and you don't see all the things underneath that way. And as you were talking, it sounds like just hard work, dedication, and ambition overall are really essential qualities to you and your success that way. And it sounds like that came from the sport of field hockey. I mean, I can only imagine how many hours you put in to do some of the crazy skills y'all do, from just kind of dribbling it. And I've seen athletes that can dribble it in the air while doing other stuff. all kinds of exercises and stuff. And it's beyond me how you all have developed the skill to do those things. Like, it is next level. I mean, I think about a lot of the other sports that I've worked in the past, like lacrosse and soccer. There's always a reciprocal component to it, where if you're using the right side, you also use the left side. Versus field hockey, they don't really make a double-sided field hockey stick, at least not that I've seen. So it's like you're not just putting in a lot of hours, but you're putting in a lot of hours in this more limited fashion, in the sense that you have only one side of the stick you can use. There's a little bit more of a constraint, and you have to kind of get a little bit more creative in how you go about accomplishing different things, because you can't use the other side. And you can't like use your feet and all these different things. I don't know. I've learned a lot about the sport for the last several years that way. And it's just amazing to me to watch you all creatively solve these problems that are, created by the nature of the sport and the rules of the sport that way. And as you mentioned, a lot of that comes into just putting in the time over and over and over again. And I feel like those are things that you don't really get without doing something challenging, doing something difficult. And it sounds like for you, field hockey was the difficult thing. Okay, the conditioning, the practices, the long hours, and like, if you're like Eastern Shore, Maryland, we get some freaking hot weather there. It's like, it's not uncommon to have 95 sunny and high humidity, and it's like most people don't want to be out there in that. Or like you look back at this winter, we had freaking snow all the time. Most people don't want to be out there doing anything for their schooling. They just want to be inside and comfortable. But it's like, those are the conditions. If you push through those and you are willing to do, my friend Nick Sedato from Boston College calls it the dirty work, so to speak. If you're willing to put in those hours, no one else is watching and conditions aren't great, then when your time is up and, your number's called, like, you're more prepared than anyone else to deliver that way. So I certainly love that point. And as you mentioned too, on the education side, it's like those are the kinds of behaviors that we want to model for the next generation, or at least I feel are important for the next generation. It's like, hey, can we teach kids the value of hard work and dedication and commitment to a cause? Because I think now more than ever, this comes up a lot on the podcast. And in fact, we literally did a roundtable recording on it recently about how things like delayed gratification and problem solving and work ethic have been diminishing amongst certain generations. And there's almost like a shift that we see. So I think in a lot of ways, going back to making those fundamental and foundational components of the next generation is only going to help us all in the long term.
I agree. I definitely working full time in Ocean City. I don't know how people don't have like that work ethic. Like, y'all, I'm gonna watch this how it amazes me. And it's kind of, I've been working since I was 14, but with my family growing up, like if I wanted something, I was gonna have to get for it. And I feel like a lot of people, there's in this generation, sort of, and probably the generation below, it's like that hard work isn't bad. That makes sense. That dedication, you get what you want is happen. It's like they want it handed to them, and I think that's a huge part in where that line is drawn. People who were very dedicated in that, like especially with athletes or even just people in general in their own work life. I think there's a huge divide. Some people, they work ethic and work when someone who just doesn't care.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I feel like when you are someone that does put in the time, that does put in the hours and something like that, when you do get to situations like you were in, it makes you more comfortable and prepared, right? When you can be the freshman on the team that's speaking up about things that need to change, surrounded by a bunch of people who are, older than you, maybe even played internationally and all these different crazy things. And it's like, you're going to be the one to speak up because you have some qualities and traits and characteristics that make that an easier conversation. It's like, hey, look at the amount of time that I put in. I'm not saying that others did not. I'm sure they did as well. But it's like when you put in your 10,000 hours and you dedicate your life to a skill and a craft that way, it makes it a lot easier to discuss things that maybe aren't what you feel should be done, or maybe aren't the way that you kind of feel like is the right way at the end of the day. And I feel like the more you kind of put in your time, the easier some conversations like you had to have as a team that way, become in the future that way. And that applies to anything. I don't care if it's sports or life. I feel like the more you put the time in on those foundational things, comfortable some of those uncomfortable moments can become for y'all. Do you have any other kind of advice for individuals who maybe find themselves in shoes similar to yours, where, hey, they're a freshman on a team or they just came into a team and, hey, you know what? I feel like something's not right, or I feel like things need to change and I need to speak up about it. How do they go about approaching that conversation? Because as I mentioned, it can be rather difficult to do. How do you kind of recommend they go about doing that?
I would definitely say, like, if you have that gut feeling and it's bothering you, you need to speak up because it's not going to go away and you're going to wish you said it. For me, I was terrified to speak up. Coming in as a freshman, and my coach that was my class, my freshman class, is her recruit, is a new coach. So we already had a bullet on our back coming in anyway. So it was like whatever I said or whatever my classmates said, like, it felt like no one cares. And towards the end, when we got the results of not winning and not making the tournament, I kind of just spoke up, and I was just like, with not having a family culture and, having cliques and not talking with someone because they made you mad the day before. Like, that's just not real. Like, someone's going to make you mad. Okay, get over it. You know what I mean? Like, and we've come up with this rule. Like, if something bothers you, you're either going to say it or you're not. If you wait 24 hours not to say it, you're not going to say anything because it's in the past. But for me, I will learn on vocalizing what I feel and keeping others accountable. Because I can keep my own self accountable very well, and I know the standard I want for myself, but I'm still on the verge of like trying to be that leader and have those uncomfortable conversations that really no one wants to have. Like, say if someone goes out before a practice, like, that's just not accepting it. Like, if they're my teammate and they're my friend, it's awful. Very unfortunate. One day with Towson University right now, we're trying to have that standard, like, get uncomfortable because it's just going to make it better. Like, I think for advice for people under me and freshmen going into college or high school or whatever, if something bothers you, you need to vocalize it. Keeping it quiet only makes it worse, and who cares if no one listens to you? At least you got it off your chest. And, like, personally, when I said what I needed to say, I felt so much better because it was like eating me alive. You know what I mean? Like, I needed to say what I needed to say, and it made me feel better, and people listen. And who cares if they don't listen? Like, all right, move on. Life goes on, and that's a huge thing for me. Like, if I say at work I don't make that much money, or at school I fail an exam, or on the field I don't make the time I needed to make for a run, or I don't make the shot I was supposed to make. All right, move on. You learn from it. And I think that's a huge part of going from high school to college is not everything's going to be perfect. And I think that's a huge thing for anyone to know is that not everything's going to go your way, but as long as you do your best.
Absolutely. I completely agree. To that point, nothing in life goes 100% perfect and as you planned it would, but there's a lot of obstacles that get thrown in your path. And to the point that you made, sometimes those obstacles in the path were put there intentionally to teach you lessons, to redirect you, or possibly even just allow you to smash them and get this newfound energy to continue onwards that way. I think a lot of times people think that those things are put there as a way to just stop their progress, when in reality is more of a call, in my opinion, to just rise to the occasion that way. And the other thing, as you were talking, it just made me think back to the title of Nick's book, who I mentioned earlier, which is called Sweat More During Peace to Bleed Less During War. And it's like, that's a little bit of an extreme example or extreme analogy, but the concept is very simple. In times when things are easy, you should be prepping for the times when things are difficult, right? So right now, here we are at the end of July. Your first game is probably 16, 18 days away, exhibition match, if I had to guess. So it's like, now is the time to put in the work and prep for that first game. It might not be game time yet. It might not be conditioning test today, but if the hours are not being put in now, when it's not being, an immediate threat, if you will, then when those times do come, it's very difficult to perform at the level you're called to. So I think, to the point that you made, being willing to kind of keep your foot on the gas at all times and being willing to just kind of push through anything that doesn't go your way, because a lot of times, as you mentioned, maybe things don't go your way from a team standpoint, but maybe things don't go your way because of injury as well. There's been so many athletes I've talked with on the podcast that have had injuries that have just unexpectedly come about and just changed their trajectory. And I have heard some of the wildest stories I've ever heard from athletes who tear their ACL and elect not to get surgery and are still performing at a D1 level years later, to athletes that are literally awake during their ACL reconstruction, which I that's beyond me. I could never do something like that. Like, I just hear so many crazy athlete stories that way from injuries that obviously no one plans. No one expected that to occur. If anything, it's frustrating because they put in all this work and time and effort to prevent those things from occurring, right? Like, oh, I was going to the gym, I was getting stronger, I was doing my stretching and mobility, I did everything I was supposed to do, and yet here we are. Have you ever faced injury yourself that way, even if it's something minor that way? Because I find a lot of athletes can relate to those things, and it's just so frustrating for them to have to deal with when that comes up.
Yes, I've gone through a couple foot injuries. I hurt my foot this past fall. It wasn't on the field. I sprained my ankle and I was out for a couple days maybe. But like the second it happened, it was just this bug, just a deep on myself. I was just like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And is this even real? You know what I mean? So I did my rehab and, watching my team play golf. And I think that was a huge, huge mental part for me. And it made me realize when I'm on that field, it's a privilege, and like there's some girls that tore their ACL and they're out for longer than a couple of days. So it made me have a bigger look on things and, it's stuff and you can't do anything about it. But I really grew from it. Which is like mentally grew from it. I know what my body can take and I know what it can't take. And just recently I was training with bungees and I tweaked like a joint in my foot and I was out for a week and I just got back yesterday to be able to run and it scared me and I was like, this can't be happening. Like I'm a week away from leaving for school, like all that stuff. But to me, it's just like take it day by day, do your rehab, know what your body can take and everything will happen in the right way it needs to be and can't do anything about it, but just keeping that positive mindset. Things are going to happen. And I think that's the huge thing about being an athlete. You don't know what's going to happen, but your mindset is a huge, huge thing for when those bad things do happen.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And it's interesting because this also comes up quite a bit working with athletes is they kind of view that injury as a time to kind of like hit that reset button, if you will. It's like, hey, for once, like playing sport is not on my day-to-day activity. And as frustrating as that can be, as difficult as it can be to be on the sidelines, watching everyone else do the thing that you want to be doing, it's also an opportunity to step back a little bit and reassess the situation and almost ask yourself a series of questions. Hey, how did we get here? Is there anything that could have been done to prevent it? Most of the time there's not. You've already done everything you could, but it's still helpful to step back and assess, I find. And then the other thing is I hear a lot of athletes using this time to kind of dial in things that maybe they were missing out on. Maybe it's like, hey, I've realized my sleep has been bad lately. I should probably be better about that. And as you mentioned, it's that having that ability to kind of step back and look in the mirror and be honest with yourself about the situation that you're in and what the best path is moving forward for you that way. And that's so difficult to develop, especially at a young age. It's funny, this also came up on a recent episode where I was talking with a few other strength coaches and someone doing a PhD in clinical psychology, and the concept came up that we almost expect athletes that are 18, 19, 20 years old to be functioning at the level of someone 30 or 35, like way more mature than their age usually is that way. And it's just almost like this like weird mismatch of age versus like expectation. And I feel like a lot of the times athletes, especially in the college level, are kind of forced to grow up a little bit quicker and, as you mentioned, mature a little bit quicker than a lot of other individuals who maybe don't have to do the same things that you do on the day to day. I feel like injury is part of that. I feel like injury forces you to learn some of those difficult things and go through trying times from a physical and mental standpoint, because a lot of these injuries, they really freaking hurt when you get them that way. So it's like you have to go through those difficult things, going back to what you said before about just enduring hardship and enduring hard things. But those things that you endure, walking through the metaphorical mud of life, for lack of a better way to put it, are the things that ultimately get you to that higher ground that I feel like you're after that way. So while I'm sure it's been frustrating for you to deal with foot injuries, by the sounds, you've been able to keep such a good mindset and come back stronger from those. What do you feel like allowed you to do that? Because a lot of times people, like I said, they struggle to develop a mindset around that injury that's like, hey, I'm going to push harder now, or I'm going to beat this back. I'm going to come back better than I was before. It's easier said than done a lot of the times, I find.
Yeah. The fall, I learned so much from the fall when that injury just happened. I felt like my life just fell apart. Like the second I saw my foot and I knew I wasn't going to be able to play, I was in a boot. Like I knew, I was like, oh my God. I felt like my life stopped. And it was a lot of emotion and I did not know how to handle it. Being away from my parents as a freshman, I just wanted my mom and dad, and I wanted them to say, oh, it's okay. Yeah, it was okay, but it's not okay. You know what I mean? Like, when you're on your own, you don't know how to handle things like that. And that was my first time of, like, something huge happening like that since I'm on a scholarship at Towson. It was really scary, and I think it took me a couple of days to be like, all right, sitting around crying about my foot isn't going to make it better. And the more time I sit around and cry, the less time I get on the field. So I took in that consideration, and the first practice I had to watch and not play was probably the worst day of my life, because it was just like, I've never not played. So I don't know, it made me so much stronger mentally, and to realize like those things are going to happen. And, you just have to have a positive mindset or you're already defeated. You're not going to get better. And I think now, when I just hurt my foot a couple weeks ago, I think really just saying, all right, we're going to fix this and we're going to be better. And yeah, it was really hard. I had to see my doctors at Towson. They told me I couldn't run or have any contact. And I was like, that's not an option here. I play in a couple weeks. Like, I can't. And they're like, if you don't do this, you're going to make it worse. And it was hard not to do anything and, not actually my runs like I usually do. But I'm very grateful that I could ran this morning and I felt amazing. So, I think it's just a mindset thing, and you're going to have to go through those hard times to get through something like that. You're going to have to build that mindset and be stronger when things don't go away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I could not agree more. And I think the other piece that's so essential to that, and you mentioned this, is just kind of surrounding yourself with a team that you trust from a care standpoint as well. Not just a team that you trust from the athletes that way, but also a team that you can trust from a sports medicine standpoint as well. And I find a lot of the universities do a pretty darn good job at this, finding individuals that are a little bit more maybe sports minded in what they do that way. It's like, hey, it's terrible that your foot is injured, but is there still stuff we can do, right? Can we still bench press and crank out some pull-ups? Could we do some like battle ropes and some upper body stuff so your conditioning doesn't fall behind, right? Like, it's always a matter of how do we adjust and adapt what we do to the injury, instead of just looking at the injury as like a reason to like pause everything, stop everything, and sideline someone completely. It's like, I find a lot of times people have plenty of things that they can do that work around their injury. A buddy of mine down in Texas actually recently tore his pec. And every single day on Instagram, he posts his kettlebell workouts that he's doing with one arm. And I'm sure it's not the most fun thing to literally be in a sling and throwing around a kettlebell with only one arm, but he's doing it. And I think that's the kind of stuff that's not discussed enough. And as you mentioned, it's the ability to kind of keep your foot on the gas that sets you up for success long term, in addition to the mindset piece. And it sounds like that was something that, you're incredibly open about. Like, there were some hard times in there. There were some struggles in there. And I feel like that's something that we collectively need to be better about normalizing, because I think a lot of times people see the highlight reels on the Instagram and the TikTok and they think, oh, they're crushing it. Like, they're doing great. Like, they never struggled at all. And it's like, when in reality, that same individual, going back to that iceberg analogy from before, he had some difficult times, right? There were some tears, in the rehab sessions, or crying because they weren't able to get out there like they wanted to, when they wanted to. Like you mentioned, it might be a culmination of first time away from home, first time away from parents, plus first major injury, first time in however many years or decades, even sometimes, that person has gone without playing their sport. Like, it's just a major shock to the system that way. I think we need to do a better job collectively about kind of discussing that mental side of injury that way, and kind of some of those mental components, and just kind of normalizing the fact that it's freaking difficult, and there's a struggle that comes with that. And I think as I've kind of worked in this sports space, I've started to see a rise in the amount of teams that have sports psychologists and mental skills coaches and all these different things that way, that didn't exist in the space a lot of the time 10 years ago. And I love to see that shift and that incorporation, because I feel like a lot of sport and a lot of what gets done is just as mentally demanding, if not more mentally demanding, than it is physically that way. Quick break, because if you're a rehab professional sick of burnout, this could be your answer. Engage Movement's blended practice model is a proven system built by Dr. Ray Gorman, a PT who walked away from the 55-hour-a-week grind and built a blended practice model that doubled his income while working less than 25 hours a week, and he didn't have to rely on the traditional way of selling sessions to do so. It's all about blending remote and in-person services, stacking monthly recurring revenue, and building a business that finally supports your life, not the other way around. This model isn't just theory. Real providers, including myself, are creating lives of freedom and flexibility without being tied to their schedule. And as a listener, you get free access to the complete training. DM my name, Dan, to @RayGormanDPT on Instagram and receive your free breakdown on the model.
1,000%. I totally agree with that. Going into college, I didn't know if I should talk to someone, like, someone that I can trust and that knows and understands that being a student athlete is incredibly hard and not many people do it. So towards the end of my freshman year, I was just like, I need to talk to someone other than my mom that understands. And it really worked, and it made me feel more comfortable, and knowing that mentally it's okay to have those days. Mentally it's okay to just have like bad practices and all that. Like, I think what a lot of athletes and a lot of, coaching staff and all that, they don't really realize that we need not really a break. We need some time to, put ourselves first. And I think that's a huge thing now. What I need to do is, with my time management, make sure I put time in my schedule. Make sure I'm okay. Give my body a rest and do what's best for my body so I can do the best I can be on the field.
And it sounds like that's something that you're going to carry over into your future coaching career as well. What are the things do you feel like you've been able to learn and take from your own experience in field hockey, all the way back from the origins in Pocomoke, all the way up to where we are now in, Towson that way? What kind of things do you feel like you can kind of take from that and apply to kind of that future coaching philosophy and framework that you're going to implement with the next generation of athletes?
Coaching wise, I want to make sure my athletes know the standard. I think that's a huge thing that not many schools have, is that standard. Like, the standard of being accountable, not doing anything stupid, knowing the goal, and, making that team environment. I don't care if you're not that good. I don't even care if you don't have all your stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I want you to have that mindset of, oh, I'm in this for a team. And I think that's where I want to build on. But, the skills will come later. Once you have that family culture, that connection, no one can stop you. And I think going into coaching later on, I think that will be my first thing I implement to my tools. And having to know my past and my career, I think just being open about it and not really being like, oh yeah, I played Division 1. No, I don't want them to even know I played Division 1. I want them to know I pushed myself from being in a small town to going across the bridge to play the game I love and wanting to be better. And obviously you want to win, but at the same time, I want to care about my student athletes. I want to make sure they're okay. And I want to make sure they know they can come to me about something. And I think a lot of teams don't really have that.
Absolutely. No, it's kind of humanizing the entire sport approach. And it makes me think, once again, going back to that concept of the team-based, the family-based kind of feel that way. It's come up a number of times today. And yesterday I did a podcast recording and had a phenomenal discussion with a guy named Harvey Martin. And one of the things that we were talking about is just how many different stressors playing any kind of sport throws at you, right? Like, I think about some of these different things I watch on the TV that way. It's like, you've got a travel element. You've got this element of, hey, maybe it's like a late night game. Like, a lot of field hockey tends to be Friday night and then Sunday afternoon from what I've seen that way. So it's like, it might be late at night Friday and you're up late, you're under the lights, you're not playing at a time you normally do. Maybe our eating schedule's thrown off. Like, there's just all these different little things that kind of compound into this like crazy stressor that put you in a situation that maybe you've never been in before, right? Like, you literally are traveling to places you've never been and playing a sport at a time that maybe you haven't before. So if you don't have the support and the surrounding of people who are in that situation with you, walking through those difficult times with you, supporting you, and treating you like family, it makes that entire process a lot more difficult, right? Like, getting a little nerdy on the nervous system side, it's like we have a heightened stress response in relation to sport for most athletes. But when you surround them with people that care about them as people, not just athletes, but as people on a deeper level, it kind of takes you from that like sympathetic state to a more relaxed state and a more comfortable state. I find that's what a lot of athletes are seeking, is to be comfortable while playing their sport, to not be constantly stressed out about little things. It's almost like a flow state or second nature kind of feel a lot of the times. It's like, for you probably just go out there and you play field hockey. Like, you probably don't have to think about like the steps that it takes to make a pass. You just make the pass. You just do it because of how ingrained in second nature it is. And I feel like the more you develop that family culture around the sport, the easier it is to relax and just be comfortable in some of these crazy situations that might be a little bit uncomfortable.
I totally agree with that. Once you do it so many times, like, it feels normal to make that hard shot, but to younger ones, we're like, how do you make it look so easy? And, that takes you a step back, but it takes you to know how to coach them. And how I was coached, it's just, I played rainbows with my stick to try to get my wrist to work. And that's where I started. And I think knowing and letting him know that's where I started, where I am now, like, it shows them they can do it too.
Absolutely. It's crazy to see the growth in the sport that way. And we've talked a lot about a lot of different things, but one that I missed and forgot to bring up is obviously the impact of the Shorebyrds organization, because now you've got this like ability to play field hockey outside of just the high school season. And I feel like now more than ever, having the ability to play a sport for a longer duration of time from a skill standpoint is needed to make it at the next level. And I know there's a lot of people that talk about the dangers of early sports specialization and all these different things. But the one thing everyone I've talked with has agreed on is it produces incredibly skilled athletes at a sport that way. I'd love to hear more from you about kind of the impact that organization had on you and your field hockey career, the development as a person, but also just the opportunities that come with being able to play a sport from a travel standpoint and go to some of those different places that we mentioned before that, hey, you know, maybe you wouldn't have gone if it wasn't for the sport of field hockey and the club that way.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start with Shorebyrds. I am so incredibly grateful for all of them. They made me feel like, yeah, I could do it. It was like a long shot, but I was like, if they're telling me I can do this and go in the collegiate level, then I'm gonna do it. And they pushed me and pushed me and pushed me, and then growing up, I wasn't the best, and I didn't know I wanted to be the best. I was very competitive, but I wasn't at the time. But I put in that extra work, and I think that's what made them see that I wanted to be better every day. And Jody Holloman and Julie Bradford, they are huge standpoints in my career. And I will always be grateful for them. Even the kids, Morgan, Macy, Jordan, Josie, they made me feel like I could do it. And so I went out. And the program is just, you have so many great athletes, so many generations in the same sport. It all has that same standard of that family culture. And I think you will also all those Shorebyrds through now Towson. It just made me so competitive in that field hockey world of wanting to do better and making everyone proud. And, you know, I played Maryland this past spring, and it was like everyone was there. And I was so nervous. And, you know, I wanted to show them, they haven't seen me in months. And I was just like, this is my time to show them. I'm here. I made it. You know what I mean? It was a really, huge moment for me. And there's a bunch of emotion towards the end. It's just yeah, I made it. And thanks to them, I'm here where I am now. And I think for younger generations that are in the Shorebyrds program, you go from doing rainbows with your stick to playing with college coaches right next to you. And it's a huge, I don't even know how to describe it. You go from one skill level to another in maybe months. You know what I mean? So it's just great coaching ability to be able to make these athletes into something bigger, just what they are.
Absolutely. It sounds like such an incredible full circle moment too, to literally go from, you know, developing amongst a bunch of other athletes to literally sharing the same field, competing against one another with them, from teammates to competitors, and just being surrounded by all the people that helped to get you there in the first place. I mean, that's absolutely incredible in every way. And that's certainly a moment that very few people get to experience. So I'm so glad that you got to have that. And I'm so glad that you had that just so positive development early on, because I found that the best travel programs are so difficult to find, but once you find them, it's like you struck gold. It's like, you know, there's a lot that I've seen in the past, and this is not necessarily something I've seen in field hockey, more so other sports. Baseball and basketball are the two that come to mind. But basically, there's this concept of hey, we need to win. And they don't often think about the athlete themselves. They just think about the winning. And it's I care less about the participation trophy that comes from the tournament that weekend and more about where that athlete is going to be long term. I can talk about that all day long till I'm blue in the face. I better get off my soapbox. And I realize we could probably talk about you and how incredible you are and all the amazing stuff you've been doing, Dakotah, all day long. So with that, is there anything I missed or any other key things that you want to discuss today that we didn't get the chance to?
No, not really. I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. Shout out to Casey for this.
And for people who want to find out more about you online, maybe reach out with an NIL deal, anything like that, where can they find you at online, Dakotah?
My Instagram is just Dakotah Trader. It'll come up. It's probably going to be the top one. Usually no one really has the same name as me. So, but yeah, you can find me there. And yeah.
No, that's awesome. We'll link to that in the description below too. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, and just click there and see everything Dakotah is up to. Dakotah, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.